Hi, Marcel. Welcome to the Bend Like Bamboo podcast. Thanks for being with me today.
My pleasure. Nice to see you, Amanda.
Thank you. Let me introduce you properly. Please welcome Marcel Lal, who is the CEO of InExpress. Marcel leads the Asia Pacific team and operations in Australia, New Zealand, India, Vietnam, Hong Kong, and South Korea. As one of the largest authorized global partners of leading carriers, including DHL, TNT, FedEx, and UPS, the InExpress business has an extensive franchise network of over 450 locations. That's huge. That has grown since 1999 and is now in 14 countries, spanning the Americas, Asia Pacific, and UK regions. Now, I did a bit of research on you, Marcel, and you and I did meet a few years ago. Was it about 2 years ago?
I think so. Yeah, yes. I think it was. Yeah.
Yes, and I delivered a resilience workshop for your team, which was wonderful. Yeah. And, you know, I've ever since I met, you've always been such a down-to-earth person, which is what I love about you. And you've done so much in your life. So you were raised in Sydney, but now you live in Brisbane.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So I made the move. I still support a lot of Sydney-based teams and New South Wales-based teams in sport. I don't think I can change that, but I do love the lifestyle up here. Great place to raise a family in Brisbane, and it's starting to get the best of the worlds that you get in places like Sydney and Melbourne as well. So I do like it up here. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, what got you into the career of being of couriers?
Well, it probably started through my franchising experience, and I'm from a technology background, but then evolved by chance and coming into franchising, which was just over 12 years ago. And first and foremost, I suppose InExpress is a franchise system with lots of franchisees, you know, over 150 in Asia Pacific, and as you mentioned, almost 500 around the world. So, you know, we are a franchise system. But I didn't have, when I came into InExpress 5 years ago, I didn't have any freight logistics experience at all. I suppose what I brought into the table was franchising. But boy, like with most things and like with most people, it's been a learning curve, but an enjoyable one.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. It's an enormous business, and I had the pleasure of meeting members of your team and all the franchisees in person at the Gold Coast. And I've never before have I seen such a wonderful culture where everybody just bonded so much. We did the at the dinner we did together, the rewards night. It was just so wonderful watching how different franchisees, you know, the way they supported each other, and you played a huge role in that as the CEO. So well done.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's one of the things that we're very lucky with InExpress is not just, I think, the support that staff give each other. And yes, naturally we support franchisees in our work as well, but the franchisees are wonderful in supporting each other. I don't think I've seen in any other franchise system where they support each other so well, and there's no hidden agendas or anything like that. They just want to help each other so that they can all ultimately succeed. And I think that that's a really nice thing. And I'm glad you got a little snippet into that at our annual convention because I suppose that flows through and you can see those natural interactions as well. But we've got a good crew. We've got a good crew from a team perspective, staffing perspective, and with the franchisees as well. They're they're a very good group, and they like helping each other, which is great.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, let's dive in. I want to ask you, because the Like Bamboo podcast is all about resilience, and I'd love to know, what does resilience mean to you?
It's a real interesting one. It's not one of those simple answers, is it? And I suppose it means different things to different people. I think to me personally, it's certainly a state of mind, Amanda, when I was thinking about it, and it's the state of mind you take into different situations and different situations and circumstances that are thrown your way, whether you like it or not. And unfortunately, we've all had that. And When I wrote an article a couple of years ago, just in the first year of COVID, which was around business resilience, I looked at that and looked at some of the things from a business perspective and what we did in the company to get through that COVID period and to still be successful. And it does translate back into your personal life as well. So from a resilience perspective, yes, it's a state of mind, but I think it's actually the approach you take to dealing with certain situations, good and bad. I'm naturally a glass half full person. I know everybody, people got different personalities. I'm naturally glass half full. And I think that no matter what life throws at you, I think that you've got to take a certain level of optimism into it, and almost, even if you don't necessarily believe it, you have to almost convince yourself that there are better days to come, or there is going to be some good that comes out of this tough situation. So resilience to me is, state of mind, but also carrying forward optimism into how you approach things. Yeah,
you're spot on. It's how you can how you maintain that state, isn't it, when the body gets tough, when you want to give up, when you sort of drop down in vibration, where it gets hard. It's and I wonder what develops that within us. The difference between someone's ability to do that or not would be our upbringing, what we watched growing up, our beliefs, the experiences we've had, our ability to stretch ourselves from a very young age, and our ability to learn from that and go, oh, I went out of my comfort zone and I was okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the upbringing and the things that you learn along the way, even in a career sense as well, I think all of those things come into play, because it does help you in your personal life and vice versa as well, and teaches you things. I think it also forces, when you talk about resilience, Amanda, I think it forces self-reflection. I know it did in our business during COVID. I know that I probably now, as I'm a little bit older and wiser, I like to think that I reflect more on situations, reflect and try to plan in advance. But when something happens, try to reflect. And I think self-reflection is really, an important thing as well. You don't have to beat yourself over your head on something that hasn't gone right. But I think that, self-reflection is something that comes into play when I think about myself as well.
I absolutely agree. And when I talk about this analogy of the building, it's the same as the role of a manager or a CEO has, is your ability to see things from the penthouse of the building rather than from the ground floor. And what you just said then is exactly the same thing. When you're seeing things from the penthouse, from that elevated perspective, you are reflecting.
Yeah.
And it's your ability to connect all the dots and see the bigger picture, and to take time to think rather than being reactive on the ground floor.
Yeah, definitely. I love that analogy. And I think the looking at the big picture, if you're faced with some level of adversity, and I think that, focusing on the bigger picture can help, at least help you get through that tougher situation individually. We have that in business all the time. But certainly when I look back, in stages in my life as well, that probably holds true. Maybe when you're younger, I suppose you just don't maybe realize it fully as much at the time. Until you start to get older and you start to reflect back, and then you can see those things come into play.
Yeah, you get a bit wiser, and you realize that sometimes when things don't go your way, it's actually heading you towards a path that's better. Yeah. And it's having that confidence and faith and your ability to manage your emotions and to regulate your energy and your emotions. That's so important. I really wish that was an actual class at school,
Absolutely. Yeah, it's true. It should be. It's an interesting concept, but I think some of those life skills are really important, because you've got to apply it in so many situations as well. Yeah.
100%. Well, can you share something that you've been through that you've had to overcome in your life?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'll probably touch on more on the business stuff a little bit later, but I think when I look back from myself personally, when I was in my early 20s, my father passed away, and why that was difficult at that time, and I suppose again, it's something that everybody faces in their life with loved ones passing away. at that time it was challenging because I was building a career at that particular point, and I left that career to, I suppose, help my mum to tidy up things and affairs. She, it was very challenging, obviously for her. And my dad at that point was only 49, or just about to turn 49. So he was still quite young, and I was in my early 20s. And I think that going into take over the small business that he had in Sydney in the travel sector, which I then went in and I suppose transformed somewhat with another business partner, taught me a lot. And at such a young age, I was forced into that situation to be a rock to other people, not just in family wise, but I think in other people as well. And I was sort of thrust into that. And I think that was very, very challenging. And at the time, you maybe don't even get a chance emotionally to let out what you need to let out, because you're immediately into a fix-it sort of mode for others. And it wasn't until time passed that I truly reflected on that, being very close to my father. And still, it was very, very difficult to do all of that whilst having those emotions. So I've got a feeling that that's helped shape different things in my life, certainly from a career perspective. My outlook doesn't make me perfect. It just means that I've got a few learnings that I think I've taken from me, and that was maybe forced upon me through circumstance. Yeah.
Wow, that would have been so hard in your early 20s to take all of that on.
It was a learning, and again, I suppose, upon reflection, you've got to combine. It's so important to let your emotions out and to feel what you're feeling, because it's obviously not healthy to suppress that. And I think that there was probably a lot of stuff that I did suppress, which upon reflection, really isn't a healthy thing. But at the same time, it's so hard. You have to toughen up at that particular point to help others that depend on you.
Yes.
As well.
Your grief would have been delayed then.
Yeah, very much. It was, and it was over probably a longer period afterwards. Sometimes I'm there. I've left where I was work-wise, and I've taken over that business for a period, and then I went back into the corporate world and kept that business and owned that business with somebody else for quite a while, for a number of years. But I think at that time you're sitting there, at the desk that your dad used to sit at, and you're dealing with people that, your dad used to deal with. So you're reminded of that almost daily, and so that plays with your emotions as well. And it's tough. It's tough. Yeah.
What was the hardest part about that time for you?
If you'd asked me at that time, it would have just been that, hey, I'm just jumping into all of this, and something significant has happened. I've lost somebody significant in my life. And I think that would be the answer then. You're asking me the question now, and I think upon reflection, I think the hardest thing is I wasn't equipped at 24 years of age, after uni and just starting a corporate career, to maybe deal with things. And I think that there's certain things, decisions with that business, with staff, with how you manage your emotions, things that there was no rule book. There was no book given saying this is what you need to do. And I think that was the toughest thing, that I, upon reflection, didn't have the tools and didn't have the skills that probably I do now to be able to manage and deal with all these different factors that were brought upon by those circumstances. Yeah,
definitely. And so you would have been so stretched, and during that time, it would have felt so uncomfortable. But now you have the skills that allow you possibly to stretch further than someone else, because
maybe
you had to.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's positives and negatives. If I'm to be really, really honest and reflect on this properly, I think that there are definitely things where I'm probably tougher and can be really, I'd like to think, a rock to family, to colleagues, to people in the work environment, where I can make some tough decisions, where I can also be there and be supportive, and because I've been through things, and I think that that's equipped me really well for that. If I'm going to be self-critical, though, one of the things at that point is that, I struggle sometimes with that, I think, emotionally, and to fully show my emotions, which I know can be a good thing not to do. But I think particularly when you're in the role that I'm in, with so many different people, so many interactions, sometimes you don't let your emotions totally out. And I think that you've got to try to find that balance. So I think there's positives and negatives that come out of having those sort of circumstances at such an early, or at that time in my life. Now, if I'm to really look at it properly.
Yeah, 100%. There'd be a lot of protective mechanisms that you would have had to have created to be such a leader at such a young age.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no question. Well, I think, though, if I translate that a little bit into a business sense, when we've obviously, all been through this COVID period, it's still ongoing, but it's sort of like back to some sort of the new normal, let's call it, which we're all living in now. I think when that happened 2.5 years ago, obviously in early 2020, in a business sense, I think that helped in terms of, from a planning perspective, communication wise, what we had to change in our business. We still weren't perfect at it, but we know that we had to communicate more with our franchisees. People needed comfort during that time. It was there's such times of uncertainty that people around you, staff, management, franchisees, want to have some levels of just assurance, in terms of who's steering the ship, who, what's actually happening. And I think communication came to the forefront. And I think that that's something, again, I don't think I'm perfect at or anything else. I just think that we had to communicate more and communicate in a better way, and not just one way, but in a two-way stream with other people during COVID as well.
You would have had the ability, though, to put one foot in front of the other, while maybe others would have been frozen in fear because of what you went through when you were younger.
Yeah, definitely. And that's my, I think, even over many years, I think that's a natural instinct for me. It is almost, and it can be to my peril sometimes, but I think that, it is to go into a solution mode. And you have to really stop and to think and pause and make sure you've got all the feedback around you, different people's opinions, feelings, and taking all of that into account with anything now in your personal life and in business as well. And I've got a lot of good people around me, not just family wise, but also in a work environment as well, franchisees, staff, management. I'm very lucky to be surrounded by great people, and also globally as part of the global leadership team. And I think that it's a really good, healthy thing to get feedback from others, and to get the thoughts of others before jumping into something. And I think that helped us during COVID a lot to be successful, for our franchisees to continue to be successful as well. Yeah,
well, they're very lucky to have you as a leader. And I think that you are very connected emotionally. It's one of the things I noticed about you. So don't be too hard on yourself.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think that those connections are important, and we lost a little bit of that, Amanda, during COVID with the franchisees. We weren't able to have those sort of annual conventions and reward trips, and our brand development committee as well. We weren't able to have all those interactions face to face. Everything was on video. Great, there was lots of different things, but as you know, in your field, it's not the same if it's not face to face. And I've noticed quite a change this year, as we've been able to have conventions, have reward trips, have different meetings, that collaboration is different. You're building really good, strong relationships as well. So I think that that's important. I think I've noticed that change this year.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. The new normal.
The new normal. Yeah,
New
exactly.
normal.
Yeah.
So if
I think we almost brace ourselves though for, what's next. You hear about there's another wave, there's other things. What happens if we're thrust back into that situation? Hopefully everybody, all of us are better equipped to manage that. Because, a lot of people found that period really, really tough as well.
Yeah, it was just so new. No, our generation hadn't experienced adversity like that at all. We'd heard about what our ancestors went through in war and things like that. But yeah, it was almost like a biochemical version of that, wasn't it? And
it was. Yeah, definitely.
But again, as you explained, like after what you went through in your early 20s and then taking those skills into your personal and professional life as you got older, it gets easier because there's a motor program for it now. And I think it's wonderful that you can talk about, how that served you, but also it's in your awareness, things that are in your detriment, and the fact that it's in your awareness is wonderful. And it shows growth. It shows growth because we're constantly learning. We're never ever going to be perfect, nor should we. It's really about getting to the next level of the building, the next floor in the building, and elevating. Because when we are on that penthouse, we access elevated emotions of love, joy, compassion, forgiveness. But when we're on the ground floor, we're very reactive and we access fear, worry, shame, and guilt.
Yeah, definitely. It's so true to take that big picture view and that penthouse view. I totally agree. One of the things I will say though, Amanda, in my role that I've almost got to be careful of and be very honest and very self-conscious of is not to just live up in the penthouse, so to speak, to use your analogy. It's to stay connected with everybody. And I think to hear what's happening on the ground, what's happening out in the field, out in the marketplace, to ensure that we have that feedback that helps us to be hopefully effective in our decision making. And one of the things in leaving a corporate career, albeit I was still in the early stages of a corporate career, to leave and to take over a small business is that I had that worked in that for a while. And quite a while, changed a few things, learned a few things, made a few mistakes, and then was still involved with that even when I went back into my corporate career. That has helped me now, and I think I've got to remind myself sometimes when we're looking at our franchisees, I'll use them as an example, or our customers, which is obviously end user business customers. They're small to medium businesses themselves, and they have so many challenges. They've got to wear so many different hats. That's the value our franchisees give and the in-express service to small businesses in Australia. So that's certainly, and around the world, that's what we do. That's our main unique selling point, is that level of service. But we've got to remember at a corporate level, at a head office level, and in my role, that they are also small businesses and they wear many, many different hats in that, and they have a lot of challenges. So I think that experience that I had taking that over and doing that, I can draw on that a little bit, and I probably have to make sure I draw on it more and don't lose sight of that as well.
I love that, and I love how you brought that analogy into it, because it is okay and necessary to sometimes be on the ground floor.
Yeah.
And we must remain connected to that part of ourselves, not only the people around us, but also in all areas of the business, but within our lives. But that part of us that can be reactive and stressed, and we're designed to survive, so that's always going to be the dominant program. And how soft and kind we can be towards ourselves is resilience to me. Of when we're there, which can then allow us to take that high perspective when necessary. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's perfectly put. Couldn't agree more.
So if I was to ask you, what was the main thing that you learned on your journey after what you went through, what would that be?
Do you mean from earlier, from the 20s, or yeah?
From your father passing away, and how hard that was, and everything we've spoken about in terms of how it served you in your personal and professional life. I don't know, it might even be a few things. Like, what are the main things that you learned about that? If it was just a snapshot of the one thing that stands out for you.
Again, I reflect back on communication, interaction with people. I think that it's important to have those connections. It's important to have, obviously family and friends, but also from a work sense, to try to surround yourself with good people. In my role, I think I'm lucky to have built a team that's a really great team. A good management team, and then for the franchisees that we bring into InExpress as well, that they share our common values, our great values, about giving back to the community and other things. And I think that I think you've got to align yourself with like-minded people, and I think that that's really important. And I think if I reflect back at that time, again, I did that sporadically at that time. But if I was equipped and had the tools at that time, and maybe the knowledge to do that at that time, I think I would have had even better outcomes at that time. So that's something, people interaction, who you work with, how you work with them, and the communication. I think that's my biggest takeout from that.
Okay. And what stood out for me after everything you've said today is your ability to reflect.
Yeah. It's a healthy thing. It's self-reflection is a really healthy thing. I suppose in a work sense, that's why you do yearly appraisals. You do that, but it shouldn't be just about justifying your job. Like when we do our appraisal process that we're about to go through for the staff, it's more about reflection. How do you feel you're aligning to the company values? How have you gone here? And it's not about, I hate the whole areas of improvement. It's areas of development, right? So it's where the areas that you want to develop in and what could help you. So self-reflection really important, and we do it in the work sense already, but it shouldn't just be why am I in this job and having to justify it. It's more about reflecting back on what you've learned and where you can develop your skills.
Yeah. I think clearly you've created a very supportive and amazing environment around you in your personal and professional life. So congratulations. It's very inspiring.
Thank you. It's not perfect. I think I want to probably stress that to anybody who listens to this. I think that it's not all perfect, and I think that that's kind of a cool thing as well, because continuous improvement, self-reflection is really improvement. But thanks for those kind words.
That's okay. Yeah. It's all about our state of mind, isn't it? And our approach. It's not about how perfect things are.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Marcel. What a great podcast. Thank you for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me as well. And it's been a really great discussion. And you forced me to actually reflect, and that self-reflection, even on these with the questions as well. It allowed me to think back and dig deep. So thank you as well.
Oh, my pleasure. And guys, if you love this podcast, please subscribe and share the love. And remember that to bend like bamboo is to change your mind about what can be possible in your minds, bodies, and lives with flexibility. See you next time. Thanks for listening to the Bend Like Bamboo podcast. Please rate and share the episode with your community or anyone you think may need to hear this episode. If you would like any help with maximizing well-being and flexibility in your life personally, you can see me one-on-one at the private practice in Melbourne or on Zoom if you are not local. You can book in or find more info at bendlikebamboo.com. If you would like help remotely, I have a resilience program you can do as an online course with 6 ebooks and videos on mind, body, food, connection that include resilience and tools that can help you to feel happier and healthier after rebuilding from change, stress, or illness. If you would like help with boosting resilience and wellness in the workplace, you can book in for a free Zoom discovery chat. The Bend Like Bamboo at Work program can be delivered in person or virtually. And if you would like to inquire about Bend Like Bamboo at school, you can find information on all these programs on my website, amandacampbell.com.au. And you can contact me on email, amanda@bendlikebamboo.com. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. And remember that flexibility builds resilience. And no matter what you are going through, you can overcome it and discover what you are made of. See you at the next session.